All right, Bone Robot Games podcast. Let's get right the fuck down to it. I'm here with Isaac.
What's up, y'all?
Isaac, hit the intro song. Remember you wrote the intro song for this week?
Batman.
That's pretty good. I was gonna do this one. Do 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 and then I just wrote that.
Oh, that's number one
Yeah.
record.
Doesn't matter what comes. Bone Robot Games for life, and just completely bite that. So we finally got down to it. I'm gonna give a little bit of a backstory. Isaac and I, lifelong friends, and we've played God of War extensively together. And from now on, when I say God of War, I'm referring to the original trilogy of God of War games. And when I say new or 2018, it's to the one that just came out in 2018. And so we played God of War 1 and 2. You didn't play 3.
I did not play 3.
We played 1 and 2 growing up together. I remember coming to your house, watching you beat it, because when you would beat it and do certain challenges, you would unlock funny costumes, like he would wear a fish suit
Yeah.
and shit like that.
Too.
Yeah. So I remember being at your house and playing it and shit like that. So as lifelong fans, for me at least, when the new God of War came out, I was like, not keen. They changed the style. They changed the genre. I said, who's this for? Another instance goes hand in hand with what we said before about ruining remakes with reboots. The same thing, unneeded. But I put it off for so long because it got crazy accolades. Game of the Year and whatever else, right? But it's a PlayStation exclusive, and this is a funny little anecdote. I knew I had an inkling that I wasn't going to enjoy it. And here's something that, here's the difference between them. I liked God of War 1 and 2 so much that when God of War 3 came out, it was PS exclusive, obviously, and it was on PlayStation 3. I didn't own one. And at the time, I wanted to play it so bad that I bought a PS3 on eBay. I bought God of War 3, I beat it, and I returned them both. So that's like, if you want to talk about like system seller, I end up returning it because I literally had no other PlayStation exclusives I wanted to play, and I cared about God of War 3 that much. That's what I'm coming into the God of War franchise with when, 2018 comes out. And, this one, I would refuse to buy a PlayStation for it. I was like, there's no shot. And then I think last January it came to PC. Just like a month ago, you told me it was on sale. We got it, we beat it, and here we are. So let's just start right from the beginning. Now, you restarted playing God of War 1 as a sort of comparative review.
Yeah, I played God of War 2018. It was on sale. I got it for like $30. I played through it. I beat it, and then as I was playing it, I was like, I want to play the other God of Wars
Mm-hmm.
because they're better.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I want to make sure it's not just like nostalgia making me think they're better. I was like, let me make sure these games were good. And I went back, I beat God of War 1 already, since I told you I was going to play it. I already beat it.
Yeah.
And I started God of War 2, and I'm probably about a third or maybe halfway through that already. They're better than 2018. They're better games, like for their time, obviously. The technology is different. But for when they were released, they were better than God of War 2018 is today.
Yeah. I would agree. Because I'm such a huge fan, I went back and replayed 1 on an emulator like a year, probably like 2021 at some point. And it's so good, and it holds up. I don't understand how it holds up, but it does.
I can make a really simple comparison that really it speaks to the entire thing. So, the very, very beginning of the game, you're on the press start screen or whatever you want to call it. You click new game, that beginning of the game. I'm talking the earliest moments of the game. In
Yeah.
God of War 2018, you hit new game, and they all do a similar thing. Like, it has like the background of the screen, and then when you hit new game, it kind of zooms out and starts to play a cutscene. In 2018, that cutscene isn't really a cutscene. It's like a QTE for Kratos cutting down a fucking tree, and then the gameplay after that, you have to like to swing your axe over and over again. You cut down a tree, and then you carry the tree. You get to walk in slow motion over to a boat, and that has a short cut scene. And then you get to travel with the boat in slow motion back to your house. In the original God of War, the first control there's a short cutscene after you hit new game, but it's not a QTE thing. It's just a cutscene. And then the very first control you get of your character is you get to fight a bunch of enemies. The first time you get to press any buttons, you're fighting enemies.
Yeah,
The
aren't
same
you
is
on
true.
the ship? Aren't you fighting like
Yeah, you start on a
zombies?
ship, and there's just a bunch of like the random enemies, and it's like the tutorial fight. They're just like press square to do light attack, press triangle to do heavy attack, press circle to grab. They tell you the buttons,
Yeah.
and then you go into the ship. You go to the next room. The next room is a mini boss. The second room in the game, you fight one of the Hydra heads in God of War
And
1.
now let's, as a comparison to 2018, I'm pretty sure the first thing you fight in 2018 is Balder, and right when you come out, you like have the intro cutscene where you're doing shit with your family and your son and stuff, and then
You
Balder
fight
shows
a
up at your
little bit
house.
of regular enemies, but there's
I
like
forgot.
a long you have to chop the tree down, you have to walk it you have to hold up on your control stick and move in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
He walks so slow, and we'll get into that later. But in this particular thing, he walks extra slow because he's carrying a giant tree trunk, and then you attach it to your boat, and then you have to hold up on your control stick some more to travel with the boat to your house, and then you travel a little bit more and you fight some regular like low level enemies. They give you some tutorial combat, and then the next fight is a little bit longer away. There's some more cutscenes, some more bullshit, and then you fight Balder.
So yeah, I was immediately unimpressed with the tutorial fighting because you have this axe that's like slow and monotonous that you fight with in 2018, and it's very stupid off the bat. It's just Kratos with an axe, and he's like, it's over the shoulder. The fighting is like slower and more cinematic and boring to me. I mean, especially coming as a lifelong fan and appreciator of the originals. The combat in the original is just so fast paced and cool. Like the rule of cool exists in all of God of War. The first thing you do is you have fucking Blades of Chaos, dude. And you're just throwing out cool blades that are chained to your arms that come back to you. You have like cool range. You're doing a ton of damage. You're beating the shit out of a bunch of enemies.
Yeah, it's dope. You get to fight like a million enemies at once. In the first fight in the God of War 2018, it's like you fight one enemy and then another enemy spawns and then another enemy spawns. Then you fight two at a time. It's like the first fight in God of War 1 is a horde of enemies. Like the very first time you control your character. The same is true of God of War 2. The very first control of Kratos, is you're fighting a bunch of enemies. And this time you're fighting in Rhodes. And then there's 3 rooms this time. There's a second room where you fight some more enemies, and then the third room is a mini boss again, and this time it's the Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah.
And the opening areas in both of those games are really, really good. Cause
Yeah.
then you go through Rhodes, and eventually you destroy the Colossus, and Zeus. You put all your powers of godhood into the Blade of Olympus, and then Zeus kills you, and you go to Hades, and that
Out of
establishes
Hades thing, yeah.
it establishes a really good arc of a story where it's like, okay, Kratos go get revenge, kill Zeus. Or in the first game, it's they slowly tell you what's going on. They do a different way of telling the story in that one, where you're like, okay, I want to go kill Ares, not quite sure why yet, and they give you the explanation as to why you're going to kill Ares throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
But in the very beginning, they do explain to you, Kratos, like the opening cutscene, Kratos is like, Athena, when are the gods going to rid me of these visions? And that's like his motivation. There's God of War 2018. Who the fuck is Balder?
I don't even think they say his name. I was so pissed off because like you have this long fight scene with him in the beginning that again is very annoying. In the cool thing about God of War the originals is they establish that like obviously he becomes a god later on, but like he is mortal and he is like they have like death is often, right? And you could like die to the hiders in the beginning. You could die if you get overwhelmed by the archers with the flame bows, like in the second fight of the game or something. So you could like die very quickly, and it realize like there is this fear almost of like death, and like the Balder fight in the beginning, it felt like an auto win, like again a narrative thing. Like they wanted it to be this thing that you like watch with these cool splash comic book pages instead of like a fun thing to do. The Balder fight in the beginning was not fun for me. I didn't know who he was. He talks like cryptically. You don't know why he's attacking you.
I had to Google it.
I never did. I literally didn't find out. They don't say Balder until like halfway through the game. I'm not joking. like they do not say who his name is. There's a point where they're talking about gods because they do that thing now in God of War 2018 where all the exposition is done while you're walking instead of in like a cutscene or like a brief cutscene or something like that, or in text. It's done while you're walking.
They really slow the game down so they can explain things to you.
And so there's like a point where you're talking to Mimir or someone, and they're just like, and Baldur is the god who has no weakness or something, and then you sort of put two and two together. Oh, it's that guy earlier who was like has no weakness. But I swear to God, it's 10 hours later.
Yeah, they don't explain who he is. They never explain his motivation. I had to Google his motivation. I was like, why is he trying to kill Kratos?
They don't tell you until the very end. It's literally in the final fight why they tell you why he's doing it.
They don't explain it.
No,
he wants to kill his mom.
Yeah,
but that has nothing to do with Kratos.
No, they do. Well, we can get to it at the end because I just beat the fight and I remember what they say. I guess I could just say it now real quick, but we'll come back to it. They weren't coming after Kratos at all. They were going after his wife because she's a giant.
Right.
He said that he didn't know that his wife was dead. They were coming to her house. They found her to beat her up.
Yeah, that's still bad though, because they explain that at the very end of the game. In
yeah,
God of War
no,
1,
it's horrible.
Your motivation is clear. You're trying to get rid
well,
because
they want to do a fucking M. Night Shyamalan reveal at the end. That's why. Because you get to the end and they do this bullshit. So, but
yeah, at the end when you kill the Hydra, Athena's like, "Save Athens for me," and you're like, "Okay, my motivation is to kill Ares, save Athens."
So I was
War
okay.
2, Zeus kills you. Your motivation is Zeus fucking killed me. Fuck that guy. I want to go kill him back.
Well, let me actually, since you're playing it now, I might be wrong. I could have swore that he like lost his godhood at some point during the God of War franchise.
You do. You put all of your god power because Zeus gives you the Blade of Olympus, and he's like, drain your godly powers into the Blade of Olympus, and so you do that. It's really cool how they do it because you start the game
as a god.
You still have your magic powers from the game before. You still have Poseidon's Rage, the spell with the giant lightning thing.
Yeah.
Which is a super strong spell and it's awesome.
You also get like no spells in 2018, as far as I know. You get like
But you have like max health. You have like a full magic meter. It's like all the way maxed out. You have every move on your Blades of Chaos when you start the game. But then when you go to draw the Blade of Chaos or the Blade of Olympus out of the ground, you see like the red orbs coming out of Kratos and going into the sword, and you see your magic meter goes down and disappears, and your health reduces to like its base level, and so you literally drain your godhood into the thing. So
you know, it's funny. As a side note, I'm pretty sure the speedrun for God of War 2 involves like clipping past that segment where that happens, so you just have all of your stuff for the whole game.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so they like do that, and I'm pretty sure. So you lose that, and I don't think you ever get your godhood back in 3. So someone could correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't played 3. I literally only played it that one time when I bought my PlayStation when it came out. When did God of War 3 come out? 2011. So it's been 12 years since I played it, and I still remember parts of it like wholesale because it was so fucking cool. But I don't think you have your godhood, and then the entire time in God of War, they're talking about how he's a god.
Well, he's the son of Zeus.
Yeah, so I guess he has like some sort of immortality or whatever. He has something.
But
he's like, he has like powers. He's like insanely strong. He lifts like insanely like huge things. He lifts like a giant fucking rock in the big first fight against Baldur.
Yeah, I mean, he always did that. And it was always like, how's this mortal doing this? But it turns out he was the son of Zeus, so he's always a god.
Yeah.
But it was just like doesn't make sense because they're like, you're not a god anymore. You're mortal, and like he like dies and stuff.
Yeah, here's
in the beginning of God of War 2.
Yeah, here's another thing they do in God of War 2018, which I absolutely fucking hate. And they've done this like I don't understand when this became popular, but it's been for a while now. It's like a Hollywood thing. For some, he has a cool axe. He obviously has the Blades of Chaos. He has like a lot of cool things, and then all you do the entire fucking game is punch people. The fight with Baldur is 90% like fist fighting, and it's like I don't want to see him like suplexing a guy. He's not a fucking luchador. it pisses me off so much. It's the same thing, dude. They do it in like Marvel movies, right? Like Iron Man has fucking laser beams, and he's fighting, whatever, some witch who has laser beams, and they just fist fight each other. They just do kung fu. They decide to do kung fu together. Like Doctor Strange can fucking open up portals and kill 1 million people, and they just do kung fu. And it's like, why are you doing this? It's so stupid. It's because they want to. It's so much easier to choreograph a fight it's bad writing. When you get down to it, you go, oh, if they used their fucking powers, this shit would be over in an instant. And And so they just do kung fu. Oh, he can take 50 punches to his face. And the punches are not even as cool because there's a scene. I'm not sure if it's God of War 2 or 3 now because I get them confused. But there is a scene, and it pissed me off so bad. You're fighting Baldur, and you just like, there's a scene where you like punch him a bunch of times. And I was like, this is just yanked from God of War. It's the scene where you fight Hercules.
Yeah,
Is that in 2 or 3?
I think that's in 2.
There's a scene in 2 where you fight Hercules, and you just like cave his face in.
That might be 3. I don't quite recall.
It's so fucking good. There's legit a scene where you just pound on his face for an extended period of time, like in a thing, and it's so cool, and it just leaves him like a bloody mess, and you have like a giant gauntlet on, which makes punching cooler because it's like 10 times the size of your fist. And in this one, he does the same thing, but it's just like a bare knuckle brawl, like he's a fucking 1930s Irishman or something, like trying to get grocery money, and he's just doing that with Baldur, and it's like this is so and Baldur's like, I hate their design for some, like the god's design is so cool, and like all the enemy design is so cool in the originals, and in this one Baldur's just like a guy that works at the fucking gas station by my hometown. He just has 50 tattoos and a long beard.
Like a meth head.
He looks like an inbred. He just looks like a fucking
It was God of War 3. I looked it up.
Okay.
Hercules in God of War 3.
Dude, it's so cool. You fight Hercules, who's like this jacked idiot, and you just beat his face in. But yeah, dude, he looks like a fucking hick. Baldur's looks like a hick. He's got a long beard, a bunch of tattoos, and he's like really skinny. And I get that he's a god or whatever, and obviously muscles are not like needed. But like Kratos is cool because he's muscular as hell.
Jacked.
Yeah.
God of War 1, 2, and 3, I'm sure they're all jacked. Like,
but
Zeus
even
is
like the ones that are
ripped.
not jacked, like you fight like Hermes or something in one of them, and that also might be 3, and he's just like fast and cool, and he has like the shoes, and he's got like the cool design, right? And you fight other gods, and they like have cool designs, and they're just like neat. And again, but like I felt even Freya was like very like uninspired. It's just they just said, yeah, we'll give them like rune tattoos. They just kind of look like Vikings from the TV show Vikings.
They all look like NPCs from Skyrim.
Yeah,
The
they
whole
look like
fucking
Skyrim Nordic NPCs, and it's like, yeah, this is like really uninspired and boring to look at. They're just like a bunch of really white Vikings, and it's like, Ares like he never looked like a human being.
Yeah, his hair was made of fire, and he was 17 stories tall.
And when you fight him in the end, he has like that suit on that has like the 7 claws on it that stab you.
Yeah, he has like the tentacle thing.
Yeah, but like he's never never see Ares at like once resembling a human being except for he has like 4 limbs.
Yeah.
And Baldur is just like some guy that I could know in real life.
Yeah, it was like they changed it. It was like now suddenly you like gods are indistinguishable from humans all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Where they're like, oh, I didn't even know you were a god. It's like, what are you talking about? In God of War 1 and 2 and 3, like, the gods were obviously gods, because they, like, Zeus, like, transported, he, like, would turn into a bird and shit like that. Like, everything was obviously God. Now suddenly, Freya, you don't even realize she's a god until halfway through the game where she reveals it to you, where it's like,
yeah,
how is this even a thing?
Well, they do that reveal 50 times. Guess what?
Yeah,
I'm a god. Guess what? I'm a god.
Yeah,
and
it's fucking stupid. Like,
yeah.
You should be able to tell. You usually can. Athena was always, like, a statue in God of War until you killed her by accident. Zeus was just this giant dude.
Oh, you could tell. Zeus has a very classic look, and you could tell he's Zeus, and that's it. He's
Ares
gigantic.
had hair made of fire. He was obviously some kind of mythological being. Everything was
But even the
obvious.
standard enemies in... I couldn't tell you the difference between the enemies in God of War. Like, they were different, I realized at the end, because you have to, like, fight them differently in 2018. In the original, it's like, right off the bat, there's, like, some sort of weird fucking zombie fish thing, and then you fight, like, the Hydra, and then the next thing you fight is, like, some soldiers, and then, like, the next thing you fight is, like, a fucking Cerberus that makes baby Cerberuses that, like, grow into bigger ones. And it's like...
I hate that enemy.
Yeah, and then later on there's like Cyclopses and shit. And it's like there's so many cool fucking enemies. And guess what? Guess what the fucking enemies are? The same enemies as Skyrim. It's literally Draugr.
Yeah.
And it's like they're just zombies. And there's like, I guess, ice ones and fire ones or whatever. So uninspired, so boring. So you go through, okay, so you do the Baldur fight, and then he just like, you clearly know that you don't kill him. He like falls down a hole or something in 2018. And then he just
I
like
believe He
disappears.
snaps his neck and thinks he's dead.
Oh, in the beginning he does that too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because he Okay, yeah, you're right. And then he's like, yeah, he's dead. But everyone knows he's not dead because he like the whole time he's like, I can't feel any pain, whatever. And then you go on and you fight like a couple more like random dickhead enemies, and it's like very boring. Like right off the bat, you're just like gallivanting around with your son, and the story is you have to take her ashes up to the top. There's a very uninspired story. Like there's like it's always interrupted with like a slow walking scene. There's another new trend where you got to climb down a rope. There's an animation for Atreus jumping on your back. You want to climb up a wall. There's an animation for Atreus jumping on your back, and you got to slow climb this fucking wall. And you want to do this. There's an animation for it. You want to do this. There's an animation for it. But they're not like quick and easy. It's like they want to be a movie. They want to be a cinematic thing that you're watching, but it's not fun to watch Kratos like, shimmy between two boulders. It's another thing that I always bring up to you. It's right in the beginning of the game. Like right after you fight him, to like progress to the next section after you fight Baldur, you have to like, the two of you have to like go through a cliff face that's just as wide as your body, and you just like slowly hold up while he like shimmies through it.
Yeah, that's the new trope in video games. All of them have that anymore. It's how they hide the loading screens now.
Yeah.
My problem with the game is just it puts presentation over gameplay in every single, like every opportunity they have, they do that. And I can't believe how much praise it got, and I think it's a sign of terrible things to come for the industry. I think to say that this game is comparable even to the original God of Wars in terms of gameplay is a joke. Like the other God of Wars, I'm playing them right now. They're great. You're constantly traversing. You can fucking jump because you have to traverse the environment.
Yeah.
Everything's. There are some sections that I don't like getting out of Hades kind of sucks in the first game.
Yeah.
They have these weird on-rails shooter sections where you're like riding Pegasus in God of War 2, which aren't great. Sometimes I don't like the climbing on walls, but they have that in God of War 2018 still.
Well, that's something that I was going to say right off the bat, pretty much, and like this is, I guess, the general gist of the entire review is everything that was like good about God of War 2018, they lifted directly from the originals, and everything was bad was something that they added.
It's something they took from Tomb Raider and
Yeah.
Last of Us and Uncharted.
Like all the stuff that even like the gripes about the originals, they still are in the game. Like the slow climbing sections, or where you can't even do it later on. I'm pretty sure in 2 and like maybe later on. I'm pretty sure in 1 you could do this. You could jump like while you're climbing.
Yeah.
And like and climb faster by jumping up, and you could attack while you're climbing, and it's kind of corny, but there's like segments where you have to attack people like above and below. You do it in the very first mission on the ship when you climb the sail.
Yeah,
and you attack.
I never like those parts because like it just dumbs down the fighting. Like,
yeah, it's just like attack up or attack down
and
or whatever.
A big problem I had with the original God of War games, 1 and 2 at least, is the circle button is the strongest button ever.
Yeah.
Like at least for the very beginning enemies, you could always grab. Later on, enemies, even those basic enemies, that you'll see them again, but they have armor on.
Yeah.
So you just won't grab them. But a grab just one shots everything when you're climbing. Kind of sucks.
Well, yeah, but the general
we can
point
get into the grabs in 2018.
Yeah. Well, the general point of that is that it's a step back. The climbing is slower because they want it to be this thing because they want to use these climbing sections for you and Atreus to talk and develop this like father-son relationship, like it's some sort of cool thing that everyone wanted out of God of War. You know what no one was clamoring for when they played the original God of War trilogy, which I wish there was like a little kid following you around.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible decision. What I wanted was for Kratos to kill people in cool ways.
Yes.
He didn't do that.
Anyone wanted.
He never. None of the kills were cool.
No.
Even the final boss, it's the worst final boss.
Well, yeah.
In the series,
we'll get there.
Worst boss.
I mean, you want to talk about bosses? The first boss is a troll, right? Which is like, you want to talk about? I guess it's a boss. It could technically be like a mini boss. There's very few bosses in God of War 2018 when there's like that's that's a huge thing in God of War. Like the first boss is the fucking Hydra, and it's like a super cool fight. And I would argue that the old ones are like more cinematic. When you first of all, there's like a block mechanic in the original God of War that they teach you about when they're like, oh, this is how you block, and then you have to use it right away because you're in the ship and the Hydra attacks like just one of its heads, and you have to block its attacks. There's nothing else you could do. You know what I mean? In the beginning, and then You use that in the upcoming fight, but there's like segments where like you get this is like a thing where you get the enemy's health low, and then a button will pop up above his head to do a quick time event, and the very first quick time event on the Hydra like head, the single Hydra head inside the ship, he like hooks it with his claws, slams it off one wall, slams it off another, and then slams it off the ground, and then it like slinks back into a hole which you'd like then jump over to progress, and it's like that nothing like that monumental or powerful ever happens. When you fight the first mini boss troll thing, it has like it's holding a big block of stone that it fights you with. It's like lethargic and you fight it, and then the kill animation is you tap the right. Well, I played on with a controller, so you click in R3 and you attack like you do the move where he jumps on his head, he punches him, and then he throws the boulder that he's holding up in the air and slams it down on his head to finish him. And that is the identical finisher that you will use on that boss and every subsequent troll boss for the rest of the game. Even the one in Helheim, which is like a specialty boss that has a different moveset. It's the same exact finisher.
Yeah, which they had the same exact finisher for enemies in the original God of Wars every time you get a quick time event, but they were interesting and interactive. So, if, for example, the coolest one ever is when you're fighting a Minotaur, just a regular Minotaur grunt enemy, not a boss or anything, you get the circle above their head to grab them, you grab them, and then you have to slam the button, you have to mash the circle button, while Kratos tries to shove his swords down the Minotaur's throat, and it's dope as fuck, because you can hear the Minotaur gagging as you get further down his throat, and eventually Kratos just breaks his arms off of his, and then shoves the thing down his face, and you kill it. And it drops a bunch of health orbs, which it does every time that you get the grab on it. But in God of War 2018, I can't remember if there's a single time that you grab an enemy and then it becomes a quick time event. It looked like the animations were too long. It looked like they wanted to make quick time events for all these grabs, and then they ran out of time.
They just didn't. You pressed.
And they just didn't do it.
Do you play it on PC?
Yeah.
What was the button input for the? Oh, you did. Okay, yeah. So it was R3, and you would press it, and it would just do a long animation, and it was the same one, and they had one. And now here's another problem with that. When you talk about like there's like a Cyclops heavy enemy or whatever, an elite mob in the original God of War, and it would have like you would press like circle to start the quick time animation for the finisher, and there would be like 4 more prompts. You would like attack him in his belly, grip your swords into him, slide under his legs, jump on his head, and then attack him on his head twice. Each one of those, it would be like circle, square, XX. But then the next time you fought a Cyclops, it would be X triangle, square triangle. It changes the prompt on the fly. It could be any of the face buttons. So you can't like coast through. You can't just tap R3 every time and then succeed.
Yeah. In 2018, you just press R3. Okay, they're dead. I just need to wait for the animation to finish. It's
and
not interactive. It's not fun.
And you could like get it from mad far away in 2018 because they wanted it to be like I would press it from like 10 feet away, and he would just sprint over to them and like do the thing, and then you'd be safe during it. Yeah, and in the originals, if you mess up at the first one, the second one, the third one, or the fourth one, there are different reactive animations to the enemy, like knocking you out of it for every single one. If you're going to slide under him and you miss, he'll catch you, grab you, punch you in the face, and throw you. If you're on his head and you're going to stab him and you miss, he'll shake you off, throw you up in the air, and hit you with his hammer. Like it's a different one for literally every one of the 4. So they've put in. I mean, they're simple, right? It's nothing crazy, but the thought and the care that was put into 4 separate animations on 4 changing contextual input finishing move buttons is just at the very least engaging, and again I would argue more cinematic because there's more at stake. If you mess up, you take damage. It's still another skill check in the finisher baked in.
Yeah, and it looks like in 2018 all the animations are so long that I was waiting for a button prompt to have it be a quick time event, but it just never came. And I feel like my instinct tells me that they just didn't have time to finish the fucking animations. Like, they might have wanted to put in a different animation if you fail each button prompt, but they didn't have time to do all those animations because I don't know why. But
and again,
they didn't do it. They just didn't do it at all, and so it just becomes like, oh, I press R3, I kill the enemy, I win, and that's it.
And it's riding on the coattails of God of War, but all of these are a step back. Like I want it to be cool when he does a Draugr finish and he rips the guy's head in half, or when he does a different like a higher level Draugr finish and he puts him into a Boston Crab and steps on his head, or when he does the stupid flying elf finish and he body checks him and then grabs him by the leg and throws him on the ground and then stabs him with his own spear. But he does it every single fucking time. It's the same one. Literally, like, you do it on the special mob elf and you do it on the regular elf, and I'm like, yeah, I don't even want to do it anymore. I'm bored of it.
Yeah, I stopped doing it. I was about to mention that. You really don't want to do it anymore because it takes so long and there's no benefit. In God of War 1, sometimes I would not do the finisher because I couldn't, for some reason, some of these Minotaurs, I would have to mash circle, and sometimes I couldn't do it. I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe I was tired, but I still really wanted to do it because they always, and the game tells you this, they always drop health when you use the grab finisher.
Mm-hmm.
And then Medusas will always
drop magic, yeah. But which, again, is like not a thing.
In 2018, there's just nothing doing that.
There's no magic. You have
no
like
magic.
you
can't like get free health from enemies by killing them.
You have to. Well, again, that's another thing that's stupid because like in God of War 1, if you don't utilize that, you're just gonna be like low on health and you're gonna lose because there's not just like health laying around. And in God of War 2018, they don't want you to lose like that. Like in this, I think God of War 1 had like less checkpoints. Like you had to go through like certain sections like wholly, and if you didn't complete it, you would just like get sent back kind of far. Well, not kind of far, but like to a checkpoint. But in this one, it's like it would just start you like right before the fight. So there's no real like failure state in the new one. But also like there's just like the point, like health doesn't need to exist because it's like, oh, you just win this fight, and if you don't, you just start the fight over with full health. And if you win the fight and you're low health, we just randomly drop health all over the place for you to pick up. So it's like a health like doesn't need to happen. Health is like on a per fight basis in the new one, which is like a very weird thing.
You could tell they carefully manage health in God of War 1 and 2 because there would be chests right before an enemy. The green chest would fill your health, and the blue chest would fill your magic. And you could tell like the way they designed the levels was around like those checkpoints, for lack of a better word, with health. You like reach this room. This room has 3 chests in it. It has a red orb one, a green one, and a blue one. So you like, oh, there's probably gonna be a fight in the next room, and then there always is. And they always try to keep your health topped up, but like you have to get through a certain section of this level with this amount of health. There's not gonna be any drops. Maybe there's a couple Minotaurs to fight, but sometimes there isn't, and sometimes you just have to not die, and sometimes you have 2 HP left, and it's dangerous.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, I have to play out of my mind here. And it gives you these moments. It's almost like a competitive FPS when you're like super low health and you're like, oh shit, there's like 6 enemies left in this gauntlet. And if I don't beat them, like I'm gonna have to do this whole fucking thing over. So I better play out of my mind. And then you do, and you're like, hell yes, dude, I made it. But I still have low health. I hope I find a chest soon. Like there's this impending doom sort of like, I have to play really well. I can't fuck up thing. And God of War, for me in some parts turned into like, yeah, just sort of like mash buttons until everything on screen is dead because I want this game to be over.
Yeah.
And, okay, so getting on with the story a little bit. Again, the characters are insipid at best. So after you... I think the next thing you do after you do Boulder is you travel a little bit. It's nothing major happens. And then you find Brock, the dwarf. And he's like, I'm going to craft weapons for you. And I'm like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. So they added crafting in, which is one of the worst things that's ever been added to video games in the history of games. They added crafting.
You know what sucked? When like you open like a chest or something at the very beginning of the game, the first thing that you like find an item is you go around a corner that you're not really supposed to go around, and you find a thing, and it's like 328 hack silver. And I was like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what? Like, why does it have to be 328? It should be 32. Better yet, it should be 3. Like, why do they have to have a big number for no reason? And then with this stupid crafting system, things like it's basically just money. Hack silver is just basically money.
It is, yeah.
And so, like, why do you need 10,000 to upgrade something when it could easily have just been 100?
Yeah.
Just cut everything down by, like, divide it by 100.
I have no
There's
idea.
no reason for this shit.
Dude, and then they also do this thing... The crafting like then leads into like exactly what you said. Chests suck balls. And when you found a secret chest in the original, it was either part of the like 1/5 items to get a health upgrade, or 1/5 to get a magic upgrade, or 1/5 to get a Spartan Rage upgrade, or however many there were. You know what I mean? You would find a piece of a thing that would give you a permanent upgrade for your character, which was extremely helpful. So like every time you found a chest, you're like, this rules. Later on, I was like, I just stopped searching for them because I was like, I would open one and it'd be like pauldrons of speed or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I don't fucking give a shit. This is the last thing I want in this game.
Yeah, they have a bunch of armor and shit, and it's
I don't
like
want
all,
equipment.
Who cares?
I never used it. You never needed to. The game was not difficult.
Yeah, it was not a problem. Now, I will, maybe we could go back to this. I tried to play the game on hard, and you die in 2 hits to the very first enemies that you fight. 2 hits. And they have 1,000,000 HP, and it's insane.
It's one of those fake hards where they said, yeah, just make them have a ton of HP and you have none, which is not a
you
real
literally
challenge.
Die in 2 hits to the very first enemies in the game. Whereas I beat God of War 1 on hard mode my first go-through already.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that bad. Now, God of War 1 is one of the only games I haven't beaten on the highest difficulty when I tried to. I don't try to beat every game on the highest difficulty, but if I like it, I'll try to. And I like God of War 1, obviously, so I tried to beat it on God mode, and I couldn't get past the 100 Kratos clones fight.
Yeah.
They kill your family so fast.
Mm-hmm.
That was somewhat arbitrarily difficult as well, because everything just does 1,000,000 damage and stuff like that. But it's really egregious in 2018. I didn't even try. I was like, all right, well,
when it's super high damage in the final boss, you can sort of like levy with it. But when it's the first enemies, it's like, yeah, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
I don't want to play a no-hit run. That's not like it's arbitrary difficult. The same way that the thousands of hack silver you get is arbitrary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thousands of fucking XP you get is arbitrary. I literally had every upgrade and thousands of it left at the end. I was like, what the fuck is this for? Why? How poorly managed was this?
You could spend it on like some kind of power thing.
Oh yeah, you could like
attacks. You could upgrade.
Well, I think it's for like post game content that I literally never did, which is another thing I'm going to get to when we get to the end. But then, so crafting sucks fucking balls. I'm not even going to go into it that much, but like you don't need that in God of War. In like the first one, it's like you just get cool weapons that you want to use later on, and like magic spells, which you don't get in this one. You had like Poseidon's Rage, and you have like the Spartan thing, and you have something else, but
there were 4 spells in God of War 1
oh yeah,
each.
you had one on each. Like
you had the range attack, which would be like throwing lightning bolts in the first one. You had like Zeus's lightning bolts.
Yeah.
And the second one, that was a bow and arrow. That was like magic. And you had the lightning thing where Kratos would spin in a circle and like do like the whole screen be covered in lightning. That's Poseidon's Rage. And they had like a different version of that. It was like Kronos' Rage in God of War 2. And then in God of War 1, they also had one of the spells would just summon a bunch of like, it was like a Hades thing. It would like summon a bunch of like souls or whatever. They would just attack enemies for free. And I don't even remember what the fourth one was. The Medusa's thing. It would turn enemies to stone.
So yeah, so that just doesn't exist. So instead of having mana that's just like, oh yeah, here's a dumbass crafting system which bloats the game up with useless chests so they can make it a fake open world where there's just more chests to find more dumb armor pieces that become obsolete in 10 seconds. A dumb crafting mechanic, which I don't even know what you needed for crafting. I never fucking crafted anything. Items that you get from enemies, it's like the game's fucking on rails. Where are you going to get these fucking items? And then like the only power-ups I cared about was like when you'd beat a boss and it'd be like you would get the flame to upgrade one of your main weapons. I was like, yeah, and then I would just do that and nothing else.
Yeah.
And so like the only worthwhile upgrades for me was the main story. So why would I ever venture off the fucking beaten path? I don't care. And that's another thing, like, they want to be so narrative, but then thematically it makes no sense because they'd be like, hurry, we have to take Mom's ashes to the top of the thing. And then literally Atreus would go, or we could go exploring. We could do whatever we want. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Go exploring? Why would they? I understand what they're trying to do, obviously, is like, what's a cool way to let the player know they could go do whatever they want now? How about just not have that in your fucking game? I want it to be linear. I don't want to have to go like searching. Like you unlock a runic like password later on to be able to go to Muspelheim and these other places. Never fucking went. I couldn't give less of a shit about these other realms. And part of the reason was because it takes so fucking long to go anywhere. So the game progresses. You meet Brock, who's a fucking loser. Oh, that's another thing. In God of War 1, there's like a bunch of people that are like not gods in the game. Like you just meet like Spartan warriors and shit and just like people in the game. And specifically there is like, so they try and do this thing in 2018 where they like characterize people like goofy. Like Brock is just a fucking blue dwarf. He's just Gimli. And then like dwarves have been done to death. So you got to have something cool. Like have him be stoic. Like I would rather him be like Andre from Dark Souls than be whatever the fuck he is now, where he's like, he always has to have a quip. He's basically fucking blue Peter Griffin. And then when they introduce his fucking stupid ass brother and he's like the worst character ever. What's his name? Sindri?
Who cares?
Dude, Sindri's like dude, the thing that he was like afraid of stuff, and it was like making him throw up, and he would also be like a Family Guy character where he'd like be stuttering and like making like goofy quips, and I'd be like, this has no place in the game. There's ways to characterize these games and like put in goofy shit, and here's a perfect one of them. Like Kratos like just kills civilians in God of War 1, and it's very
they
funny.
drop health.
Yes,
They drop
and
HP.
and well, first of all, they have like the sex mini game, which is very funny, and
Yeah.
then but then like later on, I'm positive one of the first puzzles that like is super cool in God of War 1 is like there's like there's like a door that won't open unless you burn someone alive to open it, and you're like, well, obviously I'm not going to burn myself alive, and you find like a prisoner in a cage in Sparta, and you have to like push him up a hill. And
That's not in Sparta. That's in the Temple of Pandora.
okay, so when you get to the Temple of Pandora, you're like pushing him up a hill, and like as you push him up the hill, like warriors attack you, and so you have to like balance pushing him up with like stopping him on certain areas so you can make progress fighting them and then getting him up, and then the result is you just push him onto this pedestal and he burns alive so you can get into the thing.
Yeah,
And
it's like Poseidon's challenge. They're like, like the inscription's like you have to make the ultimate sacrifice, and that sacrifice is a human life. And so
Yeah.
you find these Spartans in cages, and he's like, oh yeah, you're gonna let me out, just let me out. And you're
and
just
the
like,
and
yeah,
the
I have
guy's
other
like
plans.
pleading with you as you're pushing him up a hill to go burn him alive, and it's like obviously not like super funny, but it is this like tongue-in-cheek moment where you're like, yeah, Kratos is a fucking demon, like he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, there's not really any comic relief in the original game.
No, and I don't think it's needed. Like
isn't.
it takes itself very seriously, and there's a very serious tone, but there are those that's not comic relief, but again, it is like this. It's not lighthearted either, but it is this moment that's like, I don't know, it's not poignant, but it's not serious, right? It's like a balance where it's almost like an offbeat moment where it's just like a relaxing thing. It's not, but you know what I mean? It's just like it's this dissonant moment where you're like he's like killing someone, but you're also like it's just so far fetched, but it's not. It doesn't have to be this like. It doesn't have to be Sindri being like, "Well, I'm gonna throw up. I can't believe you said the word blood." And it's like, don't you like make weapons for a living? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, it was very corny. I hated all those characters.
And every time you see them, they have to say 50 lines, and they also have an extremely busted Deus Ex Machina, which is that they can just basically teleport wherever they want at any time, and also. Kratos has a Deus Ex Machina, which is every time he gets into trouble, that just says activate Spartan Rage on screen, and you get out of it. Which I don't remember it being that egregious in the beginning in the first games, but you let me know if it was. But
it wasn't.
I don't
think you ever did it to like get out of a. They didn't have any of that shit
anything.
where like you were in a cutscene and
you're like losing, and
yeah,
he would always just like beat the shit. That's dude. It's like you don't want to talk about power fantasy. Like Kratos always wins in the things. Like I mean, obviously he like dies and goes to hell, but like all the things where you have like control of him, he's just beating the shit out of people and
even when he
mercilessly
dies,
killing them.
he has the coolest lines in God of War 2 when Zeus kills you. He's literally stabbing you in the stomach with the blade of Olympus, and he's like, and Zeus is like, "Oh, I'll let you, like you made this choice yourself," and he goes, Kratos just responds like, "A choice from the gods is as useless as the gods themselves." He's like, even when he's dying, he's saying gangsta shit. And Zeus is even like, he says this dope line himself, where he's like, even with your last breath, you continue to defy me. And it's like, fuck you. And Kratos is gangsta as fuck even when he dies. But in 2018, he's like a stoic loser that no one ever wanted. No one wanted Kratos to become less vengeful.
They said, yeah, how about you tone him down and give him a fucking like retribution arc with another son? Hey, the idiots, he already has a son. His entire arc in the first one was, well, he had a daughter. Like, is his child and wife that he murdered. It's so much cooler than this one.
Yeah, I didn't want him to become... He's a piece of shit. He killed his wife and kid.
Yes,
just,
he
like,
kills
he
everyone.
Exchanged his soul for power by giving it up for, like, to stay alive because Ares saved him. He's not a good person. He was never supposed to be.
No, and like the end of the game is somber. At the end of God of War 3, you've killed nearly every god in the Pantheon, and the world is in complete turmoil. Like, he's standing on a cliff plateau after you kill Zeus at the end of 3, which, spoiler alert, you kill Zeus at the end of 3. You win. You kill Zeus. Like, you win the game, dude. And, like, Athena's there, and you're like, someone's there, and Kratos, they're like, are you happy now or whatever? And he's, like, looking over a vista, and like you kill Poseidon in the beginning of the game, so like the oceans are like all like just giant waves, and it's like completely tumultuous, and like the sky is blackened, and there's like storms raging everywhere, and Kratos just like dies or something. He like goes and he's like walks away or something. It's like very like, yeah, this is not a good resolution. This guy, like, his path to vengeance ruined the entire world, or his scope of the world so far. And that's like this moral of it, like that, and like you've already reached that moral that vengeance is bad, and they're trying to like do it again in 2018, where he's like, Balder, no, you don't want this, and it's like, what the fuck do you mean?
Now.
What the fuck do you mean? Kratos is the one.
So many people. He killed so many people that didn't deserve it. Like I said, at the very beginning of God of War 1, you're in Athens, and there's like demons and stuff killing people. You could kill those people yourself instead of letting the enemies kill them, and they drop health.
Yeah.
So the game tries to tell you, like, doing the evil thing is good. Like you mentioned, like killing that innocent person in a cage and by lighting themselves on fire. That's the only way to progress.
Right when
you have to do it. You have to do evil things to progress the game.
Yes, dude. Right when we decided to do this was when I met the Witch of the Woods, and there was a segment. I kid you not, dude. I almost gave up playing. There's a segment where you like get to her house, and you have to walk from like the base of a cave up like it's before you get to the cave. When you like first get to her. By the way, there's been virtually no fighting on the way here. Every time you fight someone, it's like a group of 3 enemies. And you get to the witch, and you're like in a field of flowers, and you like walk. You do the slow walk where you're in a cinematic thing where you're not in danger, and you walk through a field of flowers, and you like get to her house, and it's like a giant turtle or something, and then you like ride a boat in, and then you like slowly go into her house, and there's a long cutscene, and then it gives you control of your character again, and you have to do a slow walk down a flight of stairs, and then you get onto a fucking elevator, and it just makes you stand on an elevator and listen to someone talk for literally a minute straight. There are like 5 different elevators in this game that take like literally 60 plus seconds, and you just have to fucking stand there and do nothing.
Yeah, it's awful.
It was driving me wild. And there were segments where it would be walking simulator, cutscene that I don't care about, walking simulator, elevator, boat ride, walking simulator, and then at this point I have a gun in my mouth. I have my finger on the trigger. I said, let me fight someone. And then they finally do, and I have to put the gun down so I can control it. And then I do 2 fights, and Atreus is on my back again, and he's going, why can't I carry Mom's ashes? And I was like, what fucking video game director decided that this game needed an annoying young child to be a forefront of the game?
It's awful. I don't know why they made any of these decisions, and I think it's just they clearly put presentation over gameplay. They want the story to be like so good that people can ignore how shitty the gameplay is, and it's not.
No, the story is it's lackluster at best. I mean, okay, so let's get into the fucking brass tacks of it, because we're already 45 minutes in here. So all this happens, right? They introduce shitty crafting, they introduce shitty Atreus, and they introduce tons of shitty things. You're watching cutscenes that are boring. Freya's kind of sexy, but then who cares? She doesn't show tits or anything. And then which they show tits in God of War 1. So, so I mean, it's up on every fucking category. And this is my biggest thing. I briefly touched on it before. Everything good from God of War 2018 was taken from God of War. And not only that, they don't even tread their own path with the story. There is a part when Atreus gets sick, and it's because Kratos is a god, and this is like the corniest reason ever. When they're talking about this, I was like laughing.
Oh yeah, I actually forgot. This is like the worst.
It's because he's not realizing his true self. He's got he's got Freud sickness. I was like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Right? It was like psychological sickness. He doesn't know that he's a god, and he's wrestling with mortal ideas in his head. And I was like, this is so corny. But he passes out to dumb sickness, and you take him to Freya, and you have to go cure him, and they say you have to go to Helheim, which is basically hell, which is again a complete theme that they've stolen from God of War 1 and 2, where you go to Hades. It's basically Helheim is the Hades of this universe.
Right. So
they stole that again, like wholesale from the beginning. So nothing that they've done so far is original. The game is the exact same. It's like wife and child retribution, and then you have to go to hell. And so you're going to hell, and what do? You get on a boat, and there's this fucking scene, which first of all lasts 100 years, where he sees Athena. And I go, this part is cool. A thing clicks in my head, and I was like, this isn't cool. I go, this part of the thing was cool. Why? Because everything that happened in God of War 1 to 3, you have to have played them to even understand why this part is so cool.
Yeah.
They lean so heavily on the source and then change everything that made it great. And then what happens after that? You go back to your cabin and you get the fucking Blades of Chaos, and you have the up to this point the best fight in the game. Because you get the Blades of Chaos, you come out and you get to fight the most enemies you've ever fought at one time with them. At this point in God of War 1, you fight like gauntlet style sections where you'll walk into a room, or like elevators in God of War 1 would just be like fighting enemies for 10 floors. And the elevators in 2, you just stand there and Atreus complains like a child, which is like, if I wanted to have a child complain to me, I would create one. And then they also have sections in God of War 1 where it's like gauntlet sections where you'll just be like in a room and like, the doors will close ominously, and then you'll just fight like hordes of enemies like again and again and again.
They did
And
that
there's
a lot. It was a beat 'em up
yes,
game.
and there's this like feeling of like, holy shit, dude, when are they gonna stop? Like I'm having a hard time. And that came around maybe twice ever in 2018. But the first time you actually felt like when you come out of your cabin and you have the Blades of Chaos and you fight like 10 enemies probably only, that was like the very first fight in God of War 1. And I finally got a feeling of this. And I was like, they are just stealing the God of War 1 feelings. Like anyone who hasn't played the originals, like there's this moment here where I go, everything, like the only reason the Athena part is cool is because if you played God of War 1 to 3, it's very cool because it's like bringing up all these feelings from the original trilogy. If you haven't, this part means absolutely nothing to you, and they never fucking explain it.
Yeah. You wouldn't even recognize her as Athena.
No. It makes no fucking sense. They would like they have this reveal where it pans from like right to left, and when it's panning on the right, she's not in the boat, and when like it crosses over Kratos' body, she's there. You know what I mean? Like his body blocked her, and then she's there. It's like a fucking movie trope. Like they think that they're Steven Spielberg or something.
They really do.
They think that they're Steven Spielberg and M. Night Shyamalan. It does. It wants to be a movie. But again, I cannot fucking wrap my head around how much that relies on you being a fan of the originals. And so it's like, well, who's this game for then? Because if you like the originals, there's no chance you could like this one. There's no fucking shot. If you like,
been indoctrinated by the video game industry that think that Uncharted and Last of Us and Tomb Raider are amazing.
There just hasn't been a game like God of War since 2011. So you like the last games that were good came out in 2011. So that's the only thing. You're like just been playing shitty games for so long that you think. Well, again, dude, it's the fucking Skyrim rule. Everyone's like, yeah, Skyrim's good, and they go, well, let's just put Skyrim stuff in the game and it'll be good
Skyrim
again.
fucking sucks.
Skyrim
I'm saying
blows.
this, and people are like, "Oh, it's the one of the best-selling games ever. How can you say that it sucks? They keep remaking it." I'm like, that's not relevant to how good it is.
Yeah.
At all. I've said this to a ton of people, and they try to argue with me and be like, "No, Skyrim's good. That's proven by how well it sells and how many times they've had to re-release it." I'm like, "No, it doesn't."
Yeah,
Just
I was
proves that
like,
the company wants more money.
there's a lot of people that like shitty things. Well, okay, but that part was like so egregious. And then finally, I was like, why would they put? It's like they know that the Blades of Chaos are cool, and that's what people like about Kratos. They waited like I don't know, a third
Halfway
to half
through
the
the
game
game,
to put
I'd
it
say.
in. Yeah, but then there's this sort of moment that's like, oh yeah, we can't do it without this. We know that this is what people want. We have to put this in the game. But they were like, it's sort of like a fuck you to the originals, where it's like, we don't want to do this. Look, we have a cool axe now. We don't need your shit. But then they're also like, but we will take all of the story that you've built up and the weapons that you've created. There's nothing that they've made up on their own that's cool. Like the Blades of Chaos are fucking dope. It's an iconic weapon that no one else has. Like two weirdly shaped blades that are attached to your arms that are like punishment weapons that are on fire. Insanely fucking cool. What do they give you in as his weapon before that? An ice axe. It's like fucking random D&D dwarf weapon for that's been around for millennia.
Yeah, and it's a boomerang.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they did this again. That's stolen. All the themes are stolen. They go, well, we need a weapon that also comes back to you. Oh, he could just recall it like a boomerang. Who fucking gives a shit? I don't want to aim this thing. I'm not an archer, dude.
Yeah, it also dumbed down the gameplay a lot, where there were times where I would have low health, and so I would just spam throw my axe to kill the enemies that were left.
Yeah.
And it was just anticlimactic, and I was just like, oh, I just killed that enemy. I threw the axe at him 10 times in a row, and he died, and he was on the other side of the room. I never took any damage.
I literally never used the axe again after I got the Blades of Chaos unless I had to.
Yeah, I don't think I did either.
I didn't want to. Like again, it's they borrow so much. It's standing on the shoulders of giants, much like Kratos did when he went to kill Zeus in God of War 3. But they give absolutely zero recognition to it. They change everything about it that made it good, but they use all the things about it that made it good. It was fucking egregious. So that happens. You go to hell, and the thing that happened before, where you fight the fucking bridge watcher guy, like I said, it's the exact same troll mini boss, like completely uninspired, completely recycled. I don't understand why people are like okay with this. It's literally the first boss fight, but he can like shoot orbs now, and he summons some enemies. But it's the exact same finishing death animation. You just pull the fucking thing down. You punch him in the head, and you pull the big pillar down on his head.
Yeah, those fights weren't. Like,
oh, and then okay, so another thing I mentioned to you that like. Cute QuickTime events in the first one, people were like, oh yeah, they suck. Well, they have QuickTime events in this one, but it's just pressing RB like 5 times. You chop a tree down, you just have to press RB 5 times. It's like a QuickTime event, but worse. The actual theme of the game is they took everything from the beginning but made it worse. When you chop his heart out, it's like he rips open his chest, and then you press RB 5 times to crack open his rib cage or whatever, and then he just takes his heart out, and then you sleep.
Yeah, it's trash. All the boss fights were bad. None of them were.
Was there another one besides that? I mean, the end of the elf section was really boring, and you just fight like a guy who was very annoying to fight.
I hated that guy.
It was the worst fight ever, and you have to fight him one more time when you do like the only gauntlet in the game, where you go through. Oh, so okay.
We should explain who we're talking about.
Well, hold on.
More detail.
Oh, wait, the elf guy?
Yeah.
Isn't it just? I don't even know. He doesn't have a name, does he?
To be clear, I don't know his name. I think he's one of the dark elves or whatever. But he has a spear weapon, I believe, and he'll attack you with unblockable attacks. You have to dodge, and if you block him, if you have a blocking attack that you're allowed to parry his attack, and usually you parry an enemy and they get stunned and you get to attack them. That's how it is in every God of War. You parry this asshole, and he instantly does a backstep and leaves like a little explosive delayed grenade on the ground right where he was when you parried him. And so you get the parry, and now he's created a distance and put an obstacle between you and him, so you cannot follow up on your parry. It's so annoying. It's like everything in the game before then taught you parry is the best thing you can do, and then you fight this enemy, and you don't even want to parry him because he always does that backstep and leaves a grenade, so you just can't approach him without taking damage.
Yeah, there's zero follow-up you could do. He also sometimes turns all the lights off so you can no longer target lock him, and you just have to wait for him to attack so you could dodge. And sometimes he doesn't attack, he just throws 3 bombs on the ground, and you just have to dodge. It is a very slow, very boring fight. It's not engaging. It takes forever because he's a fucking ton of health. And the finishing move is the same as every other elf in the game.
Yeah.
When you kill him. It was super uninspired again. It's just like the same flying elf enemy, but very boring. It was awful. I hated it.
I hated that fight. I hated it.
And then so you kill that guy or whatever. You go to Helheim later. You get back from Helheim, and they go, you know what sucks? Boat travel. Here's fast travel. Psych. Our fast travel is slow as motherfucking hell. Their fast travel was you use the stone to go into the realm between realms or whatever to travel to the other places, but you have to walk on a bridge.
They're like so opposed to putting a loading screen in the game. They want to mask it with this bullshit every time. Just load the game. It's okay,
dude. It's a
video game. I know I'm playing a video game. I know it's not a movie. As much as you don't want me to realize that.
Yeah, you just have to fucking stand there on the arm of the tree or whatever until a portal appears. It takes forever. It takes fucking forever, dude. I was like losing my mind how fast or how slow the fast travel was.
Yeah, it's obviously loading because I always went forward. Like I would.
You don't have to. If you don't move, the portal just appears where you stand.
Yeah, I realize that now. Now that you said that, because I know I've been running forward and then the portals appeared behind me. And now that you said that you could stand still, now I realize, oh, it's literally just a loading screen, but they don't want you to realize it.
So I think one of the reasons why I was able to get through the game so quickly is because I was playing on my Steam Deck and it was like extremely easy for me to like pick up and put down all the time. And the reason why I know this happened is I used to run too, and I was like, oh, it's like just like a really weird, obtuse looking area and just like appears at the end of it or something. But I got to that area and I just like put it down for a second to go do something, and I came back and it was just right where I was standing. And I was like, you just don't, it's just a loading zone. You don't have to move. It just makes you stand in that fucking realm for a minute plus. Again, it's just a fucking another elevator. but
Yeah.
they pretend it's something else.
There's
So
post the loading screens.
and every method of travel is extremely slow. And then another thing they do with fast travels, in the beginning you can only travel from one area back to Brock at the base of the serpent or whatever, and then later you can use it to travel everywhere. You like unlock a better fast travel, which I've never used because I never explored anything.
Yeah, me neither.
But oh yeah, I did pass over that part. I forgot. I think it's before you go to Helheim where you call the world serpent, which should be cool. I mean, here's another thing that bothers me. In I'm not sure again which God of War it is. Doesn't really matter. But you like fight a bunch of titans, and one of them you fight is Atlas, and he's like holding up, or is it Kronos? It's like holding up the world,
Not Atlas.
and you fight him.
Too.
You fight him, and it's extremely cool. And it's like, oh wow, I didn't expect you to be able to fight something so monstrous and something so prolific in the mythos. And then in this one, they're like, oh yeah, the world serpent, oh my god. And then it like eats a statue for some reason when it first shows up. And you find out later is another Deus Ex Machina so that they can make you go inside of it later on.
Yeah.
It made no reason why he would wake up and eat a statue because he's very
It's like,
clearly
he doesn't
intelligent.
Like that guy.
But he's
It's
very
like-
clearly intelligent. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just he didn't like whatever god that statue was.
It was
I think
Thor.
Thor.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
And
hates
that's
Thor.
another thing. So they introduced the idea of Thor and Zeus, but you never see them. Like they don't even like appear because
yeah,
they're
you
in
never see any gods besides Freya and Balder,
Mhm.
and I guess
And
Magnus and
Magnus and
whatever,
Modi, which is that is a boss fight that happens. I guess that happens after Helheim. I can't remember when it happens.
Yeah, I just called them Ornstein and Smo, because that's what they fucking were.
I mean, that was an extremely boring boss fight, dude. You
It was
just
awful.
wail on them. Nothing cool happens. There's that weird scene where you're like back to back with your son, and you have to throw them over your
that was
shoulder.
fucking stupid, and it was
And
just
they
only
did
put
that
it in that fight so,
so you
could
can
do
put it in the
final
Balder
boss.
fight. Yeah, it's so dumb. I was about to say that. So it's like they wanted to teach you. There's another thing when you first you fight Balder on the back of the dragon when you get to the top of the hill, and you like jump off the cliff to fight him, and there's like that weird cutscene where he's like punching you and you have to dodge it and like fight
Yeah.
back, and
Yeah,
they
that
just
shit
do
sucks.
that so you could do it in the final cutscene without
Yep.
prompts. It literally like two of the prompted minigame fight scenes earlier in boss fights were so that you can do it in the final boss fight without the prompt so that it looks more cinematic.
Yeah, it was. They just wanted it to be a movie, and then when he kills the final boss, it is the dumbest and worst kill Kratos has ever done to
Okay,
anyone.
well, hold on. We'll get there again in a second because I wanna go
All right.
chronologically if we can. So when you get to the top, I am fucking up the chronology a little bit because I was so pissed off about Helheim. I had to talk about the Athena part. But you get to the top of the mountain and they're like, "Oops, wrong mountain." And Balder, and you take Mimir's head or whatever, which is another dumb thing. Is just another person to do exposition at you the entire
Yeah.
time. But Mimir, who conveniently knows literally everything in the world,
Yeah.
he knows who Kratos is. It doesn't make any fucking sense. How
he
would he
knows
know
everything.
that? That shit was bothering me so much. Later on, he's like, you're the ghost of Sparta. He's like, don't call me that. I'm like, what do you mean, don't call me that? He never cared. Every time someone in the first one's like, Ghost of Sparta, he's like, I'll kill you. But it has like, he doesn't fucking care. He just carries Mimir around. Mimir, how do you know who Kratos is? Like, the way that Kratos got here is fucking insane. Well, they don't explain it ever, but like, it's some sort of multi-realm travel. But like, they don't explain it. But also Mimir and Tyr later on, you find out have like knowledge of Kratos. They have like, how is this possible? They know who like earthen people are. It like again, the way that they rely on you knowing what God of War 1 to 3 is, they rely on you knowing that like something about Norse mythology and the fact that like the Bifrost quote unquote would be able to like travel to Earth, but it's like, is that what they did? Can they travel to Greek Earth? Do they know what that is? Kratos is like, they know about other gods and other realms. They already have their own like pantheons of gods in 9 realms, like their entire like closed in thing. The fact that they like talk about other gods is fucking psychotic. That'd be like there's like a passage in the Bible where God is like, and then I shook hands with Buddha and Muhammad. It's fucking stupid as hell. It makes no sense. It makes no sense that he knows who he
Yeah,
is.
they don't explain it at all.
Dude, it doesn't make any fucking sense. How would Mimir know who he is? Anyway, so
It's just like a
it's-
suspension thing.
it
They're
is
like,
literally-
we're doing a different pantheon this time because he killed all the other ones.
Yes.
Don't ask questions. Don't worry about it.
But it's so dumb because it's like they're like, well, how do we get all this knowledge across? Because we're doing the extrapolate while you Like be given exposition while you walk method. Well, we need someone who knows more than Atreus. How about a disembodied head that sits on your belt and talks to you the whole game? That was their idea. It's so dumb. This is beyond sophomoric writing. This is like writing prompt in 10th grade writing. Like this should have been knocked out of your head when you were in high school, and the fact that these guys made a game out of it makes me want to knock it out of their heads now.
And the fact that they're getting all these like awards and people are like, oh, the story and the way they tell it is so good. Like I want to burn down the Game Awards venue.
Yes.
Wherever they have that, I want to light it on fire.
If you played this
what
game,
are you doing?
Yeah, if you thought this deserved an award, you need to go read a fucking single book. I'm telling you, go read a book. This is a horrible way of telling a story. It might be the worst way.
God of War, the originals were great because if you recall, there was just like a narrator. Like
Yeah, it was
press
dope.
New game on God of War 1, it zooms out and it's Kratos standing on the suicide bluff, and he's just like, now the gods of Olympus have abandoned me. Now there is no hope. And he jumps off the cliff, and there's a narrator that comes out and is like, oh, but things weren't always this way. Just a few weeks ago, this happened, and then it takes you and you get to play through the game. And the narrator narrates it and is like, oh, but Kratos did this and,
Yeah.
and this and this.
And
then in God of War 2, they reveal the narrator is Gaia, one of the Titans.
yeah.
And then she helps you for the rest of the game. And it's a super cool way to tell the story.
And then you
who's
team
the
up with her
narrator?
in 3. I'm gonna get to God of War 3 because it has one of the best opening sequences of all time. The opening sequence in God of War 3 is better than all of 2018. Like it's so much better than 2018. Like you can't play God of War 3 and then play 2018 and not feel like it is such a step down that people should be ashamed that it has the name God of War on it. But we'll get to that in a second. So the Baldur fight, again, there's so much agency and so much control in Kratos in the original trilogy where everything you do. Actually, this might be a perfect opportunity to talk about it. So when you fight Baldur on the top of the mountain, it's like you don't do anything. He like attacks you. You get into like a fight with him. They like throw each other around. It's like a cutscene. The entire fight is a cutscene. You have no like input in it. And then Kratos jumps off a cliff and lands on the tail of a dragon that Baldur also landed on, but neither of them knew it was there at the time because it wasn't on screen until they jumped off the cliff. And then they land on it, and then they fight on it, and then you kick Baldur off of it, and then the dragon, and he lands on it again, and the dragon crashes. And there's a brief moment where you're fighting each other, and you can like he very easily telegraphs his moves. He'll either attack you on the left or the right of you, or throw punches, and you can block the punches or roll left and right, and then parry him or like reverse attack him, and that's it. You could like, if he's attacking right, you press left and then punch. If he's attacking left, press right and then punch. Or you could block his punches with the block button in the middle. Like very uninspired, very boring. And then that's it. And then you just like the cutscene ends and Baldur's gone and you don't interact with him until you fight him again later at the end of the game. And or you actually don't. What happens is that the dragon crashes into. So I don't fucking remember what happens. Anyway, it crashes and you interact him with again right before you go to Helheim for the second time when he's back when Atreus is with you. But when I talk about like the God of War 3 prompt being so good, the beginning of God of War 3, because God of War 2 ends on a cliffhanger. You're climbing up Mount Olympus at the end of God of War 2, and you're like, Zeus, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I've released all the Titans. And then the game ends. And then God of War 3 literally picks up at the exact same spot, and you're on Gaia's back and you're climbing up Mount Olympus and you jump off and you're fighting up your way up Mount Olympus, and the first thing you do is fight Poseidon. And they did something so fucking cool. So most quick time events when you fight bosses are like, or even something simple like when you pull like a Hydra's head off, or like a Gorgon's head off, obviously their heads are like their power. They look at you and you die. It'll have you like rotate the control stick left and then rotate the control stick right, and then he twists her head off. And it's like a very small but immersive feature, right? You're rotating the stick and he's rotating her head. You know, very simple.
Yeah. Or if it's a struggle thing, you'll have to match a button.
You have to press the button and it feels like an actual struggle, or like, something like that. Or sometimes it's like, oh, you press like you swipe the stick up to move up. You press left and right on R1 and L1 at the same time, and he slams both his hams down. Something very like simple, but you can see how it relates to what you're doing in game, and there's a connection there where that's a good theme where like what you're pressing is directly related to what's happening on screen, and it feels good. It's not just the button tied to that action where like the rotating of the stick is the rotating of the head, and it feels good. They do something so cool in God of War 3 at the beginning. You fight Poseidon, the way that so you beat Poseidon in the fight, the way that the quick time event happens is it shows it from Poseidon's point of view. It puts you in his his eyes, and it's showing Kratos, like, he throws Poseidon into a wall, and then it puts you in Poseidon's eyes. You're looking at Kratos. Kratos is walking towards you as you're looking at him, like, from Poseidon, and it's just, like, says, like, press X, and he starts punching you in the face. And so you're pressing X, and you're, like, punching, yourself in the face from the point of view of Poseidon. And then, like, he's throwing around, and then the last thing that happens in the fight is Kratos grabs his head. He's, like, face to face with you, and he has his hands on your head, and he starts to put his thumbs into his eyes. And the quick time event is to press both sticks in, the L3 and R3 at the same time. You press them in, he plucks out Poseidon's eyes, and then it zooms back out to a third person point of view. He plucks out his eyes, kills him, and throws him into the ocean.
That's elite.
And throws him off Mount Olympus in the ocean. When he hits the ocean, since he's Poseidon, like, a giant tidal wave goes out, and it's fucking insane looking. And it was so immersive. I will never forget it for the rest of my life. It was such a cool feature, right? They said, how can we flip this on the head? We showed it from the point of view of Poseidon, that pressing the R3 and L3 at the same time, you're, like, clicking it in with your thumbs the same way that Kratos would be clicking his thumbs into Poseidon's eyeballs to poke them out. It's so fucking cool. It's such a cool thing. And you're seeing it from Poseidon's point of view, so you, like, feel helpless, but you're also in control. There's so many cool things that are done there, and it's also cinematic. It's engaging. There's this agency. There's this powerfulness. And then what do you do in God of War 2018? You're holding your shield up, and you have to look where the enemy's running at you from the smoke, and they automatically get thrown over you.
That ending sequence at the very, very end of the final boss fight, your stupid kid will start attacking with you. It's like Kratos is attacking with him.
Oh, yeah.
What do they do? They let you press the square button every time it's the turn for the kid to attack.
Literally, that's it.
That's
so
the
they
button
do.
that shoots arrows,
They
so
well, again, they do. You throw a punch, and then Atreus throws a punch. Who literally has not done kung fu the entire game. He's only shot arrows and jumped on their backs, and has not fought a single enemy. But he's gonna fight Baldur, and so, like, again, they do these things where they, like, make you do, like, the shield mini game where you flip them over their shield so they can use it later on. But Atreus has never done this because they want to have a fucking M. Night Shyamalan moment where there's a cool reveal where he does something neat, right? And so Kratos punches him, Atreus punches him, but you have to press X to do it. And that
it's
happens.
Always the same button.
It literally is. Yep.
I just watched on YouTube because it's such an unmemorable boss fight that I had to watch on YouTube, and it's literally on PlayStation. It's square every time.
Yeah. That's
the make Atreus shoot an arrow button when you're in regular combat.
Oh yeah, you're right. So it's whatever, the left on the diamond.
X on Xbox.
Yeah, that's what I was doing it with. It's the left of the diamond.
Yeah, it's
of the face buttons.
Face button.
Mm-hmm. So and you could, like, spam it and succeed.
Yeah.
And there's no, like, it's not cool, right? It's not like you're flicking the right stick up and he's doing an uppercut and then you're doing it to the right. Like, it's just, he just shows up, it slows down for a second, you hit him. It's a movie scene. It's not engaging. It's not cool. I don't give a shit. Atreus could not be doing any damage. He's a 10-year-old boy.
Yeah, fuck that kid.
And so, like, that whole thing is, like, again, it's monumental. That's the first thing that happens in God of War 3. Like, it ramps up from there. You fall back down Mount Olympus, like, all this crazy shit happens. And, like, the end fight is like, you and a 10-year-old boy beating up a methed out drug addict from the woods. Like, it makes no sense. And so where was I in the story? So you fight him there, you save Atreus, you tell him that you're a god, you do some more bullshit, you climb back up a mountain, and then to get to, like, you find out you have to go to Helheim, which to get there you have to, what the fuck do you do? You go to, like, where do you get the stone from or whatever? The stone that Tyr... Oh, you do the Tyr challenge, which is you, like, flip the thing upside down or whatever, which is, like, another thing.
That temple upside down or whatever.
So, yeah. So, again, like...
You just, like, have to find a way to travel between realms in a better way or some bullshit.
So he flips the temple upside down, which, again, they want these big moments where, like, cool stuff happens. But, like, I can just still remember another moment from God of War 2 where you have to fight the Sisters of Fate, I think, at the end of God of War 2. And one of the things you do is, like, you run on those giant chains that are, like, tethered to those huge horses that are, like, carrying their temple or something.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's like a fucking huge moment. It's, like, so cool. There's these giant horses. You're running on gigantic chains. It's carrying a temple in it that you know you're about to go through. It is a super fucking cool reveal and a super cool moment that they let you play through. And this one, it's like, oh, he flips over the temple. It's like, I don't care. This is, like, nothing compared to the original God of War games. It has a huge thing to live up to, and it's not doing it. So you do the tier thing, you flip over the temple, you get his secret stone, a bunch of dumb shit is revealed, and then you do the first gauntlet of the game, where you have the you know what? There's the moment where you get sent back to Helheim because Atreus gets mad at you fight Magni and Modi, their fight sucks, and then later on, like the one that lived. Oh yeah, first of all, doesn't he also just snap that guy's neck at the end of the fight? Oh no, he like chops him in the face a couple times.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
He chops him in the face with his axe, and then he lets the other guy run away.
Oh yeah, that was extremely corny.
So that he can like come back later. Leave him, boy. He's finished or whatever. Which is like they do a callback or something later on. It's like sucks balls. No, what do you mean leave him? He's finished. You literally kill people with wanton abandon. That's who you are. So he leaves so that he can come back later and like put Kratos in a headlock, and then you use rage to get out of it so that Atreus can have rage, and that's where he gets sick. Oh, that's how he gets sick, yeah. And then when he sees Modi the next time, he like stabs him and pushes him off a thing, and they're like, and then later on they're just like, yeah, you weren't acting like yourself. That wasn't you. That was your weird sickness. Horrible writing. And then it's so hard to remember the events of the game because they were so stupid and boring. And then you like get into a fight with. When you get into the fight with Baldur, you go back to Helheim, but you have Atreus with you, and you like escape on a boat. You see like memories in Helheim, and Atreus knows that you're Zeus's son there because he sees you fighting him, and then you also see that Freya is Baldur's mom. That's like a big reveal when you're in Helheim. It's like a shadow fight, and he's like mad at her. I'm like, I don't care about Baldur's feelings. I don't want to. Also, that scene was so corny because you're like slowly climbing around the outside of the room that he's on, like trying to be sneaky. Like Kratos is afraid of people.
Yeah.
And he's like,
what the fuck is that about?
He's like, like slowly, going around the perimeter of the room so you don't have to challenge Baldur. And then you just leave in this weird way where you turn the ship into a flying ship by lighting some fires. And this is like the first time I started to feel like God of War, because it's like this puzzle where you have to keep both the fires lit with your axe while people are like enemies are trying to put it out, and they're attacking your ship, and you have to keep your ship afloat by keeping the fires lit by also fighting people. That's the first time I felt like God of War. They're sending like a bunch of enemies at you, different enemy types. You have to balance between fighting them and keeping the fires lit and moving around the ship, and then you're getting attacked by anchors. And you have to throw the anchors off and then beat a mini boss and then throw the anchor off and then light it. And that was like, oh, finally, it's starting to feel like the game. And this is 3/4 of the way in the game.
Yeah.
And it's the first time you feel like God of War. And then I'm speed rushing a little bit too because I want to get to talking about the end. But you go out, you get the special stone from Tyr, you travel through the secret realm, and there's a gauntlet. And this is the other time it starts to feel like it. You go onto a special elevator that goes through, like, it stops at every floor because you're like coming up from the inverse temple, and it stops at every floor, and it's like, oh, we're at Muspelheim, and you fight a bunch of enemies, and and then it stops at the next floor. Oh, we're at Helheim, and you fight a bunch of enemies, and that's like where, and then, oh my god, 2 trolls, and you like fight enemies on every floor, and then you're done. It's like, this is again another staple of the game. They put like one in is like fan service, a thing that is like a staple of the game, a classic of the game that is within and without it, like nonstop, like 50 times throughout every fucking game. They do one time in the game as like a callback, like it's a Marvel movie. And it's like Howard the Duck scene, or they want to put, hey, remember this? Like this is like the core of the game. This needs to be like every fucking 10 minutes. And then you do that, and then the Deus Ex Machina comes back up where you go, remember that statue that the serpent ate later? Well, I need to get Mimir's eye out of it because of another dumb thing that we did. And then so you go in and you get you're inside of the creature, and then I had this in reverse order. You go inside the creature, and when it spits you out... Oh, no, you spit you out is the end of the game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get the eye, and then you have to go do something with the eye. And then wait, what do you do with the eye?
You get the eye...
you, like, travel to... No.
Oh,
no,
right. That's the end game. You get the eye, and then the serpent spits you out, and Baldur goes, that was me. And then you fight him, and... So
that's the final boss.
And his I don't know if you want to start talking about how bad this is, but he's
I just watched it on YouTube. It's incredibly anticlimactic. In fact, another one of our friends, Hand, played it, and I was talking to him about it, and I was like, yeah, it was like the most anticlimactic boss battle I've ever seen in a God of War game. And he was like, yeah, you're right, because I don't even remember who it is. Like he doesn't remember the fight at all because it's unmemorable. And
Yeah.
I beat the game like a week ago at most, and I had to go back and watch it on YouTube because I was like, what happened again? And it's just a bunch of shit. It's terrible.
Dude, so the another thing that keeps happening is like you fight him for a little bit on top of a mountain, and then you guys like crash down, and Freya shows up and is like, "Stop fighting each other. That's my son." She gets like some of the worst characterization. She turns into a fucking Mary Sue in this fight. It's insane.
Yeah.
And then like she's supposed to be this cool, powerful woman that like helps out Kratos and like and likes Atreus later on, and she's like kind of interesting. And then and she's also hot, so like she gets a pass. And then she shows up and she's like, "Stop fighting each other." And she's like trying to like tie you down with with like magic roots. And there's a scene where she goes to tie you both down. Only Kratos gets trapped, and then like Balder rolls out of it. And then Atreus is like, "I'll protect you, Dad." And Balder like punches him in the chest really hard, and he like fucking crumples the kid. And he's like, "Oh," Kratos is like, "No, Atreus! Oh my God, you took one punch." And he's like, "You're bleeding." He's like, "That's not my blood." And you look at Balder, and he had punched like the fucking mistletoe arrow that was like still, like I don't know, it was like for some reason pinned on his chest. I can't remember.
Kratos fixed
His
quiver,
quiver
his
with
strap
it.
broke,
Mhm.
and he was just holding it together. And he's like, "No, I can persevere through this." And Kratos was like, "No, we don't deal with broken equipment, so we fix that." And so he broke one of his arrows. He had mistletoe arrows at the time. He broke one of those arrows and tied it to the thing to fix his quiver thing. And then when you go to Freya later, when
And
she
she
was just
takes
the
your
witch in the
mistletoe
woods,
arrows, yeah.
and she was like, "Oh, get rid of those mistletoe arrows. That stuff is evil or whatever." She's like really like weird about it.
Yeah.
And then she gives you stronger arrows. So you're like, "Oh, I guess I just wanted to upgrade my arrows." And then they reference it here.
Where
Apparently mistletoe breaks the spell that made Balder invulnerable.
Yeah.
And now you can kill him.
And so he's like happy about it because he's like, "Oh, I could feel now." And so he's invulnerable, and you just fight him now. And it's like, "Oh, I guess we could kill him." We didn't know how we were going to kill him. It's like such a lame way to do it. They just do it in the last fight. It's not like you were like, "Oh, we need to find out what happens." Like literally Mimir is like, "Oh yeah, I remember. That's how it happened. That's how you fix it." And it's like, "Oh, cool. It's in the last fight. This is like not momentous. It wasn't like you found an item and then he was like, you showed it to him." Yeah, I think a cool way to do it, this just popped in my head just this instant, would be you find an item and you show it to him, and then she like obviously he wants to be able to feel again, but his mom doesn't want it to. So it would have been cool if if Kratos had it and he like plunged himself on it to like cure his own curse, and he didn't want it. But they couldn't have you do that because the writing is so bad that they wanted Freya to have this weird fucking meltdown at the end of the game, which I think it turns her into a bad guy for the second one, which I think is why they did it, because they do this weird thing where you fight him and it's horrible. I don't know if you want to take over because the fight was fucking atrocious.
The fight is very bad. You just fight him like he's any other enemy. He has a couple moves. You can parry them. But every like 2 seconds, it feels like they interrupt you for another like 15-second cutscene where Freya has to say something, or she just like occasionally traps you in those vines like you were saying before, and you have to mash circle to get out of it.
Yep.
It's like a bunch of like every 2 seconds something changes. She's controlling some giant statuesque motherfucker, and he like picks you up and moves you across. You're getting to fight in a different arena now, and you have to do that shit where they do that punching sequence. They do that shit where you're like facing in different directions with your shield because you don't know which direction he's gonna come from. They do a bunch of that stuff, so it's like a bunch of little bullshits that you don't like. Let me tell you about the very first or the final boss fight in God of War 1, the very first God of War. So it starts by you have Pandora's box, you open it, even though Ares took it from you. You open it, you become giant like Ares is, and then you just fight Ares one-on-one. You have the Chaos Blades, you have all your stuff, and it's really cool. And then he sends you to like a different dimension where you have to fight 100 clones of Kratos while they try to kill Kratos' family, and it's really hard. I just played it on hard, and it took me like a dozen tries. They just like kill your family really fast if you're not good. And then the last phase of the fight is you fight Ares again, but he takes your weapons away, and so you go and you take that giant sword out of that statue, and so you just fight him with not the Chaos Blades, which some people don't like. It's also got this weird mechanic where the health bar
It's
is
like
like
a fighting
shared.
game
Yeah,
thing.
it's like
Yeah.
a shared health bar where if he does damage to you, it causes it to move, and there's like a center point of the health bar where you can run out of health or he can run out of health, but you'll have full, like, you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
it's like it balances. Like you have to maintain momentum to kill him. It's a weird boss fight, but it's got three very different phases to it. It's very interesting. You know why you're fighting Ares. Like you say cool shit to each other the whole fight. It doesn't interrupt you every 2 seconds to give you a cutscene or some exposition. Whereas this one, it's so anticlimactic. You end up killing him finally. First of all, you're just gonna let him go. Like you beat the shit out of him. There's a sequence where like you're just on top of him and you just have to spam the button and you're Kratos is just punching him in the face. And
Which
it's
is
not even
again,
like interesting.
Again,
animation.
it's taken 100% from the Hercules fight, but worse.
Yeah,
It's the
trash.
exact same thing you
punch him
do.
a bunch of times, and then Kratos starts to like strangle him, and then Atreus is like he makes a callback to something that Kratos told to him earlier, where he didn't have to kill, I guess, Modi.
Whatever.
Where
Yeah.
he's like, oh, he's not a threat
He's beaten,
anymore.
yeah.
He's beaten, and so you let him go, and you're like, all right, you're never gonna come after us again. And you start walking away, and then he goes to kill Freya, and he's like strangling Freya to death, and then Kratos grabs him, and he's like, the cycle ends here, which is something that Zeus said to you at the beginning of God of War 2. He says the cycle ends here, and then he kills you. So you say the cycle ends here, we have to be better, and all he does is just break his neck.
Yeah, he
It's
snaps
like
his neck like Superman does to Zod at the end of fucking Man of Steel.
And that movie sucks dick.
It's so corny. Dude, when there's a scene like when you fight Zeus in I think it's God of War 3, it might be in God of War 2. There's a scene where you fight Zeus and you have a big sword, and there's like a part where you stab him with it like directly in his fucking chest, and the quick time event is like to spam X, and you would think it's just like you stab him one time, but like Kratos like fucking penetrates him with it like 10 times. Like he just goes in and out with the sword when you're like pressing X. He's like,
Yeah, that's in God of War 2.
doof, doof, and you're just like fucking stabbing him with it, and it's so cool. And this is in God of War 2, which came out 15 fucking years ago. And there's this insanely cool scene where you're stabbing the shit out of him. And how do you do this? It's in a non-controlled, corny cutscene where Kratos snaps his neck.
Yeah, there's not even like a button prompt to like move both control sticks in opposite directions.
Exactly.
Interesting. It's nothing. It's
Nothing
just,
cool.
Boom, snaps his neck, and then like then the game ends. And
Well,
you have to
no,
walk up
no,
and
no,
out.
no. It's much worse than that. What happens is Freya has the worst characterization of all time, where she's like very leveled and even tempered and cares about nature, and she says like this corny ass again like high school era line where she goes, "I will rain down all the worst hells upon you. Fuck you, Kratos, for killing my son who was trying to kill me." And Atreus is like, "I don't get it." I'm like, "Neither do I. This is so stupid." And then you just walk away. You just leave her there, which is again, it's just like really bad writing because they want to set her up to be like a bad guy later on for no reason. Like I don't know, they want you to like fight her. I don't know why they did this. Like there's no reason why she would like not understand. She's a god. Like she's not like. I understand. They're like, oh, you never get over the death of a child. And it's like, you're completely forgoing Kratos' first child who he killed, which is his entire inspiration for God of War 1.
Which, by the way, they don't mention it ever.
No, they never talk about his other wife and child from a different realm.
Which was his entire motivation.
It's why his
for
skin is
fucking
white.
games.
It's why his skin is white in this game. It's their ashes on his body. And it's like,
Yeah, the rest of the game is you. There's no enemies for the rest of the game because the game's not over. But you still have to go and travel, and that's where you took Mimir's eye and you use that to go to Jotunheim.
yeah.
And then
they do
it.
it's like 20 more minutes of exposition. I was like, I think I just beat the game. I was
couldn't
like,
believe when I got to Jotunheim and there wasn't a real final boss.
dude, I got to the end of the game. I was laying in bed. I was with my fiance. I literally beat the game on my Steam Deck. And I was like, she's like, how's it going? I was like, I think I beat it. But like, I couldn't tell. How can you not tell if you beat a game? I was like, we killed Baldur. Who else could there be? Are they going to introduce some random fucking schmuck at this point in the game? They don't. But then you go to Jotunheim and it's just a ton of walking around. And then
Not
they just
one
like
enemy.
and they just do a bunch of exposition. They explain that your wife was a giant. She never told anyone. They foretold that you guys were gonna come to the top of this mountain for some reason. No one has been to Jotunheim in forever or whatever, or Jotunheimer. And then you get there, and they reveal that fucking Atreus is Loki. They say
Yeah.
you're a god. Your wife is a giant. And that's how Loki's born. Oh, she wanted to name you Loki. That's what he's like. That all the scripture has me named Loki, and they do that. They reveal it. It's like another awful, weird fucking reveal. Like, oh, he's gonna be this. He's gonna be Loki. It's and again, it relies on you already knowing like Viking mythology. which they
Yeah.
don't really do in the original God of War. It's not you don't have to know who Ares is. He's just like a guy that's characterized differently in this game. You don't have to know like anything that he's done in Greek mythology. They never mention it. It has no bearing on the game. But
Yeah,
in this
if
one,
you know it, it's a little bit cooler because like you'll fight some Greek heroes and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
yeah.
Like you fight Theseus and you fight Heracles and you fight all these dudes.
But it's not like there's this implication here that like, oh, this is a big and heavy weighted moment, but it relies on not God of War 1 now, on the fact that you know Greek mythology. Like if you know Loki, that's a big name drop. What if you don't? What if you know nothing about, or I'm sorry, Viking or Thor or what is it? Norse mythology. But if you know nothing about it, well, I know very little. It's like if you know nothing about it, then it's like this just means nothing. Like this means nothing to you. It's just saying another name. It's
I'll
like
bet you
really
90%
bad writing.
of people thought it was like a reference to Marvel.
I think so too. And but the actual thing is like Loki. Loki is the son of a giant and a god, and he like fights. He might bring about Ragnarok, which is something that they alluded to at the end of this game, where there was like that picture of him and Kratos was next to him dead. But then, like, so there's this interesting thing that also makes no sense where they're relying on it, but they're also implying by the fact that your wife, who I don't know, they don't ever name her, as far as I remember, is a giant, and like they knew about this. It's like prophesized, which means that now Kratos was in another realm, but he was prophesized to come to the Norse realm, which makes no fucking sense either.
He killed the Sisters of Fate 2 games ago.
Yes, so there's no fate tied to him. As far like I guess there's a fate in Norse mythology. It makes no sense. Like it doesn't make any fucking sense why that would happen. And then so they do the Loki name drop. You like scatter her ashes in this weird like father son moment that means nothing because this woman was dead from the start of the game. She's never named. You have no attachment to her whatsoever. You have almost no attachment to Atreus because they fight the whole game. They're not kind to each other, and it makes no. And they're just like stupid. And then it has this Loki name drop, and then you just you start like you scatter her ashes. You start to walk back to like because you have to walk back to just go to the teleporter and leave, and it starts rolling credits.
Yeah. And it's the most anticlimactic ending I've seen in a video game, period. The boss fight was anticlimactic because you just snap his neck, and then there's like an extra 20 minutes between that and the credits rolling.
Imagine you have to fight. Imagine you have to fight Ares at the end of God of War 1, and then they make you walk back to Sparta with no enemies.
Yeah, it's insane. They do make you walk up to. It's very cool. It's extremely cool. You kill Ares, and then it goes back to the very beginning cutscene when you first press new game and Kratos jumped off the cliff. He does that, and then he's stopped by the gods of Olympus, and they say we actually have a reward for you, and it opens up this weird door that you saw at the very beginning of the game. You're like, what the fuck is that? And then you walk up there and you take the throne and you sit.
You sit on the fucking throne. Yeah,
it's extremely dope.
Yeah.
But it's not 20 minutes. It only takes a few seconds. It takes less than a minute.
And it's in a cutscene. And the rest of it is a cutscene. There is no like. You have all these like, incredible graphics, but there's no cutscene. Everything's done in game. I want to see a fucking cool cutscene. Like that was another cool part of God of War. It's cool when it switches from you playing to a cutscene and you throw Poseidon off a cliff and a giant tidal wave happens. None of that happens. All the like when the world serpent appears, it's like cool or whatever because it's a giant snake and he's really big. But it's just like an in-game thing, and it does like this thematic over the shoulder look, and then that's it. He just like talks to you, and there's no like cool cutscene. Like nothing's happening. There's not like ravaging going on. There's like a cutscene at the beginning of God of War 3 where you're climbing up the fucking mountain on the back of Gaia, and he's like, Zeus, I'm gonna kill you, bitch. It's like fucking cool as hell. He's literally just on the back. He might say something very similar to that. He's like legit might be like, Zeus, I'm coming for you. It's just like super cool, very simple and straightforward. And you beat Baldur by not controlling it. Like that's a gameplay cutscene or whatever. And then you walk around for 20 minutes and then it rolls credits. And then another super egregious thing, I don't know how they keep getting away with this stuff. You go back to like the home base or whatever, and it's like, you could do whatever you want now. Go fight the sexy Valkyries or whatever. And I was like, no, I just shut the game off and uninstalled it.
Yeah, I found out later that there's a if you go back to your house, there's like an extra cutscene for the like an extra ending or some bullshit. Never saw it because I turned the game off after I fucking beat it. I was like, oh well, I don't. The biggest problem, like we've gone over the whole game. Here's the biggest problem I have with the game, and it's fundamental. Kratos moves like a 70-year-old man.
Yeah.
He walks everywhere extremely slowly. They didn't even let you sprint for like the first 20, 30 minutes of the game. You're not even allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes forever to get anywhere. It's so fucking slow. Everything, the whole game is so slow. In God of War 1 and 2, you could flick the control stick to dodge. The right control stick is how you dodge. You flick in whichever direction you're going to dodge in that direction. So you could do that, and then in the first game at least, you had the R1 button, which was like a shoulder tackle move. And so you could just flick the stick and press R1, flick the stick and press R1. You could fly across the map. It was super fun and super fast to get anywhere. But in this game, you're just fucking walking.
Yeah,
Walking everywhere.
and not only that, like there's the cutscenes where they're doing the exposition where you're slow walking and some dickhead is talking to you, but then there's just like gameplay where you can't really run that fast and you just have to go up like a big part of a mountain and like tap B to climb a cliff, except for you're with Atreus, so you have to like boost him off a cliff and then wait for him to kick a rope down to you, and then you climb up the rope to go meet with him, and then he goes, hey, what's this over here? And then you walk down an alleyway and you haven't fought any people, and then you go again, and the two of you have to climb under a low rock gap, and so the two of you crouch like a bunch of fucking stupid looking crabs, and you walk by each other through a little cubby. And I'm like, why is this in the game? Who decided that slowly traversing these stupid mountainous passages was going to be fun? It's not fun. It's not gameplay. The core of the game in God of War 1 is the fighting, and in this one they're like, yeah, you're just going to be like slowly walking around for a long time, partly so that people can talk to each other, but there's also just points where you're just walking and nothing is happening. You're just walking, and it's silent, and it's boring, and it's stupid.
They have constant forced walking in this game, and it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely egregious. I couldn't fucking stand it. I'm like, why can't I just run faster? Is it because you can't load all these stupid, unnecessarily advanced graphics? Like, what the fuck is the point here?
And dude, there's also this one's partly my fault, but when you go to Tyr's vault, there's like there's another dude. Everything when you interact with something with Atreus, you have to like press X or it'd be square or whatever on a PlayStation controller, and he like you press like the X prompt comes up, and then he like goes and he's like, oh man, it's a pedestal, let me press the button or whatever the fuck, or he's like carving runes into sand. When you go to Tyr's vault, you like take a big ass elevator. And I went somewhere one time and I was coming back and I accidentally pressed the X prompt to take the elevator because I was going the wrong way. And I took the elevator all the way down, but it's at a time where like going to Tyr's vault is voluntary. Like I'd already passed that part. So it's legit like a 60-second slow, silent elevator ride down to the bottom of Tyr's vault. And then I just had to press the button and ride it back up because there's no way to get back up.
Like, that's egregious. Like, why would you not just have a loading screen and let me do it instantly?
I mean,
Or you know what you can do, which is what God of War 1 and 2 do, is the elevator isn't actually going to take you 60 seconds because they didn't build a whole fucking world that there's a loading zone, and it just switches, and, like, it takes 10 seconds to take every elevator in those games.
Yeah.
Because they just switch what area you're in, like, behind
Yes,
the scenes,
it doesn't
so you don't
need
tell.
to be interconnected. This is not Dark Souls. It doesn't matter. Like I say this all the time. When you take Atreus and he's like sick, and you take him from like I can't remember. You're walking somewhere with him. You walk him from like from like the witch's house to like somewhere else. And I remember you walk out of her door and he's in your arms, and and Mimir's like, hurry, we have to go fast. We have to put him on a boat and take him somewhere. And you slowly walk down her steps. You can't run with him. And you're going like this slow walking speed with him cradled over your arms. And you have to walk down her ramp, and it's 50 meters long. And then you walk 50 more meters to an elevator. And then you go down the elevator for a minute straight. And again, I was just like, why is it this big? Why do you not walk out her door, walk
And
10
the boat
feet,
is right there.
and the
Like, what
boat
the
is there?
fuck?
Yes, exactly. You have to go to the boat, and then you put him in the boat. There's an animation, and you sit in the boat, and you slowly ride the boat over somewhere, and you get out, and you pick him up, and then you slowly walk with him again, and then you lay him down, and then you kiss him on the forehead, and the whole time is like, all I can think of is, does this travel from this point to this point need to exist? Does it enhance the game in any way? No. And people's argument for it, oh, it's narrative, it's story based. That shit sucks. You're doing
Fuck
it
you.
horrible.
How about
Exactly.
gameplay?
Fuck you. There's a million. I don't play these video games to watch a fucking story. And if I did, I want it to be presented in a cool way. And a cool way is not slowly holding up on the control stick, like because it's like all this could happen. They want it to be immersive. It's not immersive when I'm holding up. All I'm thinking is this fucking sucks. This way of progressing the game sucks dick. I want it to be streamlined. I would much rather watch a 5-minute cutscene than have to hold up on the control stick while do that.
if
I would
they're-
rather
if they
not do
wanna
either.
that, yeah, it should. If they want to
this
do
is the
that,
worst
it
of
should
two.
just be a cutscene.
Yes.
But you know what? I will say this game does. it does do a good job of telling you how shit the rest of the game is going to be in the first 5 seconds. Because the first thing you do is you get to cut down the tree by pressing the attack button 4 times, and then just like when you're carrying Atreus, you carry that fucking tree and you can't move anywhere near quickly. You're slower than usual,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the very first thing you do in the game. And it really is a reflection of the rest of the game. Oh, this game's going to be slow and boring and shitty,
Yeah.
and
For
it
no
represents
reason.
itself well in the first 10 minutes.
It's because it's slow and boring and shitty because hey, guess what, guys? We're telling a good ass story here. Except for all of the key parts of our story are lifted from Norse mythology directly and God of War 1 to 3 directly. We added virtually nothing to the game. I honestly can't think of a single thing that is original in this game. What do they add? Freya is a god that they took from Norse mythology. Like the story of Kratos in 1 is him killing these gods in the Greek mythology, and Kratos is an invented character, and they had him kill these gods, which is an invented thing. And so but again, they don't even use Greek mythology. It's not like, and then Zeus turned it. Remember when Zeus turned into a, it's not like, oh, there's a reveal where, oh, guess who did this? Zeus. And you have to know who Zeus is. It doesn't matter because the relationship between Zeus and Kratos is established in that they fucking hate each other. Well, actually, in the first game, Zeus is helping you. But,
yeah, Zeus is actually, when you go to save, it's like Zeus has given you the opportunity to save your game.
and you
And
have
then in
like,
the second game, it turns into, it still says Zeus at the beginning, and because he's like helping you, he gives you the Blade of Olympus. And then after he kills you, your save point starts saying Gaia has given you the opportunity to save your
yeah.
game. It's pretty cool.
So it's like the relationships are established between you and these characters, but there's no relationships established here. The entire thing is this, they want it to be this father-son thing because he's going boy the whole game, and it's like this meme where it's like, oh, it's Kratos and his son, but the characterization is bad. Atreus is not well written. They're not interesting, and all the stuff is done not through cool means. It's him riding on your back or like being weird or being a child, and none of that was fun and interesting. You have to talk to a dumb dwarf, you talk to a dumb person. All these characters, I don't think any of them were invented. Kratos kills Magni, Modi, and Baldur, and that's it. Like it's like it has no like oh now he's killing another pantheon, which is again just ripped from God of War 1. So it's completely unoriginal. It's completely boring, basic. I mean, it has good graphics. It has like competent gameplay in the way that like it doesn't glitch out and like, you know what I mean? It's smooth and precise and snappy, but it's not like good gameplay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not
it's
super
functional. It's well done in the fact that it is complete but it's not fun or
It's
enjoyable.
certainly not God of War.
I can't think of what the word like it is. You know what I mean? I try and give it like credit for like it's not janky.
Yeah.
It's
like they didn't,
it's
there's no-
competent.
It's not buggy. The game
Yeah.
never crashed for me.
No,
that type
me
of stuff.
neither. It's a competent game in the way that all of its intended features work, but also all of its intended features suck complete dick.
Yeah, they had very poor intentions.
Yeah. Or even if they had good intentions, the execution was so bad. Now, part of me, I mean, I can't because this one's also now a PlayStation exclusive. I want to see what the deal is with Ragnarok. Maybe I'll watch like a Let's Play or something because I don't know if I could stomach playing through it. Someone I saw was like, this should have been Game of the Year already, like over Elden Ring. It got stiffed. There's a masterpiece. And
Dude,
I was
yeah,
like,
I saw people saying Stray should have been God. Or Game
oh,
of the Year.
yeah.
Dude.
But I was like, dude, I like God of War 1 is better than 2018. It just is. It
is.
like today it
As
is.
someone who just beat both of those games in the last 2 weeks, yes, it is.
It's better today than God of War 2018 is, and it was better when it came out. And it's a huge step back for the series. I hope that they retroactively take Ragnarok off the shelves and burn it. I hope that like they do a fucking global Men in Black memory removal of it, and no one knows what it is. It's again a reboot that's tarnishing the old. I'm upset that I played this game. I only did it to see if it was any good. I wish that I had. I mean, I knew that this was going to be the case, right? This was just like.
Yeah, you
solidifying
called it before the game even came out. I swear to God.
I did. I remember writing about it on Facebook and saying like, this
remember
is
that as well.
this is a mistake. Like I'm sure. I think I even wrote like what I just said now. I'm sure it's going to be competent. I'm sure people are going to like it, but it is not God of War.
Yeah, it isn't. This is the trend in the gaming industry. We have God of War 2018. We have Mass Effect Andromeda. We have Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just a bunch of games ruining a storied legacy of what came before.
But they look good.
They look good.
That's the only thing. They're fucking up good stories for good graphics. I can't believe this is happening because there used to be a time, I feel like there was like a gaming renaissance where people were like, graphics can be shitty if there's a dope ass story, and now it's basically like, if your graphics are good enough, people will play it, even if it will. I want to put play in with an asterisk because it's not really gameplay.
Yeah.
This feels like we need to think of a word for it. You know when they see like football stats, like when you watch like a professional football game nowadays, and with all of like the TV timeouts and game stoppages and like time between plays where the clock is rolling but nothing's happening, and people say like, oh, there's actually like 14 minutes of like actual like plays being happening, like actual game being played over the course of like 3 hours of broadcast because there's like so much downtime.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not like real football. Well, they go like, this is like not real gameplay. This is like fake gameplay with a bunch of filler in between.
Everybody wants like a 60-hour game, like The Witcher 3. It's like, it's hours and hours and hours and hours long. Well, how much of that is actually gameplay? I don't know. I never played Witcher 3 as an example.
I couldn't get
but
through
in God of War 2018, how much of that is really gameplay?
It's not. I mean,
how much of it is you walking extremely slowly while carrying a fucking tree?
Yeah, exactly. And like I didn't do anything on the side. I streamlined because I did not want to play it anymore. I wanted to do it to do this.
Why would I slowly walk to the other side of the map to fight a dragon or whatever? I don't want to slowly walk anywhere. I was like, okay, I guess I'll slowly walk to the end of the game because I can't go any faster.
Yeah. Once the credits started rolling, it was over for me. I uninstalled. That's it. I had no more desire to play.
Like, that's it.
So, unfortunately, it's a bad trend. I mean, if you want a good God of War game, the 3 hold up so well, they always will. You have to play God of War 3. Everyone should play God of War 3. The beginning of that game, I told you about it. You're not going to experience the majesty of it until you do it yourself, and you're going to be blown away. You still will.
Yeah, I'm going to play 3 after I beat 2.
You absolutely have to. Any closing remarks on it? I think we covered everything.
The gameplay, well, I just want to say one positive thing. I found the combat to be fun once you got the Blades of Chaos, but that's halfway through the game. But I think they made some competent combat on occasion. The boss fights were all anticlimactic, not just the final boss fight, which was egregiously anticlimactic, but all of them were okay at best. And that's a huge problem when it comes to God of War, which was built on boss fights.
I normally would like to say something like this as well. I'm going to double down and say there's nothing good about this game. Everything that you think is good is a trick. You got to reinforce your mind palace. They're tricking you into thinking this is a good game. It's bad. Please don't support this game or its developers. Cory Balrog, I'm going to put you in a fucking headlock when I see you. I'm going to rip out all your pubes one by one, and I'm going to fucking feed them to you. Now that's Kratos style.
That is Kratos style.
This has been Bone Robot Games Podcast. Good night.
Good night.